Hi, I'm Shan Wu with a Under Color of Law hot take on what is the Trump regime really up to with all these crazy appointments. So Pete Hegseth, the nominee for the Department of Defense, holding aside the fact that he seems pretty unqualified, holding aside, well, not holding aside, there's also now come to light that he was involved in an allegation of sexual assault back in 2017, an actual police report. And he was relieved of being in the National Guard over a controversy over tattoos that he claims are just religious tattoos, but they happen to be symbols associated with white supremacist nationalists. So that's one of the appointments. Then there's, of course, Tulsa Gabbard, and then, of course, Matt Gaetz and RFK Jr. Let's just focus on a couple of these, in particular because the agencies I think are important to look at in terms of the appointments. So Kelsey Gabbert, Tulsa Gabbard, she wants to be the next director of national intelligence. So that's a position that was created post 9/11 to ensure coordination of shared intelligence from the numerous agencies to keep the country safe. She has zero experience in doing that. And perhaps worse, she's demonstrated a tendency to either be a dupe of foreign powers, kind of cozying up to them, saying good things about them, or worse, maybe she's in cahoots with them. That's been causing a lot of alarm in the intelligence community. All right, then, of course, we have Matt Gaetz, who would head the Justice Department. We've talked about Gaetz some, but as more people are tuning into the fact that Gaetz is going to be nominated and this issue with the House Ethics Committee investigation we're going to talk about in a second, let's take a listen to Geraldo Rivera's reaction.
All I can tell you, Leland, is great to do your show, that when I heard that Matt Gaetz was picked to be Attorney General, I threw up in my mouth. I think it is a horrible, creepy choice. I have no idea why he did it. The others are, controversial, but I think ultimately eminently defensible.
So you gotta love the expression on the anchor's face while Geraldo is saying that. Then even the conservative bulwark who founded the Federalist Society has really bad things to say about Gaetz. I mean, we can put up the screenshot of the quote where he says that, quote, this is a quote, "The man is absolutely vile. There are pools of vomit with more to offer the earth than this STD-riddled testament to the failure of fallen masculinity." All right, so maybe that's where the whole kind of vomit throw-up thing came to Geraldo. Now, there may be additional things, though, going on here that play in with Gaetz's appointment, because he resigned from Congress, and theoretically he resigned because he was going to become the Attorney General, but it was just in time, as you've probably read, to avoid having the House Ethics Panel release its report looking into the allegations of his drug use, sexual activities alleged with underage minors, the sex trafficking allegations. So now, because he's resigned, he has the argument, and looks like the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, wants to agree with him, that the report should not be released because he's no longer in Congress. Well, here's the problem with that. In the past, the House Ethics Committee has released reports looking into a representative's wrongdoing even after they left Congress. So it's certainly possible to do that. And it certainly seems like an important thing to do here, given that he's not kind of just going quietly into a disgraced retirement. Quite the opposite. He's going to have an extremely high-profile job. So I want to talk about the nature of these jobs and how they play into the structure of our democracy. So both of these positions, leading DOJ, the Director of National Intelligence, really are crucial parts of the legal apparatus of the structure of the country. If you control the intelligence sharing, you're able to manipulate, of course, what the public knows and manipulate what reasons would appear to be the justifications for foreign policy and national security decisions. With the Justice Department, it's also very interesting to take a look at just how deep the early appointments are going. It's not just the cabinet position, the Attorney General, but Trump has also been very fast to name who would be his Solicitor General, the Deputy Attorney General, and even a position called the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General. They've all been named. Quite a few of them are just his defense lawyers. These are slightly lesser known titles than the Attorney General, but having been in DOJ as a counsel to the Attorney General, I know the bureaucracy and the hierarchy pretty well. So I just want to give you a little bit of background to that. The Deputy Attorney General, known as the DAG, is the #2 position at the department, and it's really considered the COO, the Chief Operating Officer for the whole department. Back in the day, Rudy Giuliani, remember him? He was once at DOJ, and he was the Associate Attorney General, the #3 position. In those days, though, that position tended to be more of what the DAG is today. That used to be the person running the day-to-day of the department. More recently, that's turned into the Deputy Attorney General, notably Eric Holder was the DAG under Janet Reno, my former boss, when she was the AG. Then there's the Solicitor General, that's the person in charge of handling all of the Supreme Court litigation for the country on behalf of DOJ. But it's more than that. They also have a big hand in overseeing appellate decisions, even in lower courts, federal courts of appeals, when to appeal something from the district court. The Solicitor General's office, the SJ's office, will still get involved because they have the great expertise and are deferred to about what things are worth appealing. Now, we get to the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, the so-called PADAG. Now, most people don't know what the PADAG does, but they're like the main deputy to the DAG. One thing I learned from working at the Justice Department in leadership, not as an assistant U.S. attorney, was just how many acronyms you have to learn. I was told when I first got there that it would take me about a month or two just to learn all the acronyms, and they were right. There was a joke at DOJ that the more important your position was, the shorter the acronym is, like Attorney General versus Principal Assistant something or other. But that position, the PADAG, is a critical place where they're in control of information, disseminating, delegating to policy decisions. And so it's really telling that the Trump regime is already naming who might be there, because these kinds of positions are critical when you're running an agency that has over 100,000 employees. That's why they have begun, even now, to start thinking about the staffing of not just the cabinet level, but the secondary tier as well. What's important about that is they are very aware of keeping up the appearance of legality. This is, you put in your loyalists who may be morally bankrupt and happy to help Trump in bad intentions, but they want to keep the appearance of the structure going. So a noted professor, Kim Lane Shepley, has written extensively on this topic. She uses the example of modern-day Hungary and Poland in particular, with the Viktor Orban example in Hungary. And there, what they did was they did exactly this. They kept a framework of legality in place while they put in loyalists and did what they want. It's really a feature of 21st century autocracy. It's very different than our notions of dictatorships in the 20th century in the style of a Hitler, Mussolini, or Stalin. More stereotypical, the idea of tanks in the street, massive violations of human rights, even massive executions. It's a little changed today. It's more subtle, trying to use the appearance of, quote, democratic apparatus to accomplish the goals of very undemocratic leaders and autocrats. So as she writes here, and we'll put up the screenshot for you, it's really these takeaway lessons of the 20th century that we have to be aware of to prepare for different threats to liberalism. The new autocrats come to power not with bullets, but with laws. And they attack the institutions of liberal constitutionalism with constitutional amendments. They carefully preserve the shell of the prior liberal state, the same institutions, the same ceremonies, and overall appearance of rights protection, but in the meantime, they hollow out its moral code. She describes it as the liberal souls having been killed. By the time people really realize this, it's too late. And that's the problem with what many of us have described as the normalization of what Trump has done. The way the media covered the election as this horse race between two candidates. It's normalizing what's really happening here. So calls to action, well, on the Gaetz case here, there really should be a lot of interest in releasing the report. he hasn't made a lot of friends in Congress, so it's not just people in the progressive or the Democratic wing asking for that. There are Republicans who are really opposed to him and conservatives. But what we can do is really support that pressure and keep up the pressure, asking our representatives at the state and federal level to push to release that information. Releasing that information raises this question of, well, other people, stuff gets released and they still get confirmed. What's the point of doing this? The point of doing this is actually to create the record. There may be some roadblocks to him getting confirmed. That would be great. That's the way it's supposed to work if the Senate actually reviewed his nomination. But you're really building a record, and records take a long time to build. The extreme right has been working on the Supreme Court and the courts and jurisprudence for over a half century. They started decades ago, long before they were actually in power. The dissents in Supreme Court opinions, they aren't just people like whining, oh, we disagree with this. They put into those dissents the seeds of what can be used in the future to build cases. Just like overturning Roe, for a long time, the right judges were putting in the language, the concepts. Maybe they don't get picked up. Maybe they do, but they're establishing that record. That's why it's important for us to still do that, even if at times it may feel kind of hopeless. Oh, what's the point? Congress is going to do what it's going to do. The Supreme Court's going to go along with Trump. If we take that attitude, it turns into a kind of behavior known as, quote, anticipatory obedience. And we'll talk more about that, but certainly mainstream media fell into that trap. We need to avoid it. All right, that's it for now. Good talking to you. Keep those replies and comments coming, and I will be talking to you soon.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.